Ivana, what are you doing here? I had just returned from shopping when I saw a figure standing frozen at the front door. I was so taken aback that I dropped my shopping bags. What about your honeymoon? I came back alone. Upon hearing this, Ivana started to cry. I am Emily, a 58-year-old housewife. My husband is Oswald, who is 60 years old. And this is about my daughter Ivana, who was supposed to be on her honeymoon, but was inexplicably standing at our front door with her suitcase. Hold on, I am totally lost here. For now, I let Ivana inside the house to hear the details. I placed Ivana's pink suitcase by the entrance and ushered her, still sobbing, into the living room. I then set a glass of iced tea on the dining table. Ivana began to sip it cautiously. I slowly began to ask questions, trying to piece the situation together. So, you came back from Hawaii all alone? Yes. She was supposed to be in Hawaii for her honeymoon, just 2 days ago. Why exactly? I am familiar with her husband Lloyd. He's a courteous man, and as far as I know, he has a significant role in a major company. He seemed very promising, like someone who could provide a stable life. That's why we celebrated their marriage. As Ivana began to speak, I learned a shocking truth. There was another woman there. Excuse me? On their honeymoon? A woman? My voice cracked in disbelief. So we ended up spending time together, all 3 of us. Wait, what? A honeymoon with 3 people? And a woman you didn't even know? Just hearing that made my blood boil. I pulled out my mobile phone, quickly found Lloyd's contact, and hit the call button. Wait, Mom. Ivana tries to stop me with a weak voice, but I totally ignore her. How dare he do this to my Ivana? Unforgivable. My hand holding the phone trembles. After about 3 rings, Lloyd picks up. Hold on, what's the meaning of this? You're hanging out with another woman? I started ranting without even waiting for Lloyd's response. Then, in an extremely bored tone, she's my sister, my actual sister. What are you misunderstanding? What? His actual sister? I don't know where to direct my gaze. Ivana has her head down too. Sister? Your real sister? Yes. There is nothing shady going on. She's the sister who lives in Hawaii and couldn't make it to the wedding because her kid had an ear infection. Oh. So, I have a question too. I can't reach Ivana since you seem to know what's going on here. Is she back with you? While saying this, Lloyd lets out a sigh on the other end of the phone. Women really go off the handle so easily, making a fuss and then fly all the way back to Boston on a whim. Is it the female hormones that make you act so irrationally? Even if I got it a bit wrong, there is no need for that kind of language. That comment was totally insensitive toward women. I am getting pretty steamed. The one who acted on emotion and left is your Ivana. I will be staying in Hawaii as planned for a week. When I get back, I expect a full apology. Please let Ivana know that's the plan. With that, Lloyd hung up abruptly. I really can't wrap my head around the situation. Yeah, me neither, but Mom, you kind of jumped the gun with that phone call before we could get the full story. According to Ivana's explanation, as soon as they arrived in Hawaii, it seems Lloyd's real sister was waiting for them at the hotel. Lloyd told me, so my sister will put you through some special training to see if you're worthy of being my partner. I've never heard of a honeymoon where the groom's sister tags along to give lessons in housekeeping. What? We never talked about this. I wanted to visit the beautiful beaches and Mauna Kea mountain. When Ivana stammered this out, "That's your problem, isn't it?" Ivana felt emotionally shut out. "But you said you wanted to go too." "Once my sister's special training is over, we can go wherever we like. Of course, all three of us. The reason we chose Hawaii, where my sister lives, is precisely for this." Then a woman named Sanaya, the sister, said, "Enough talk. From today, I will be giving you an intense homemaking course. I've been doing this for years. As both a wife and a mom, I want to go all out to help my brother's marriage. Off to my house we go." So it seems this mysterious training started unfolding. "So, what happened once you got to his sister's house?" I found myself parched. I poured more iced tea into my empty glass to encourage the storytelling. Even though Lloyd is usually serious, it was clear from that phone call that he looked down on women, and Ivana as well. Turning a honeymoon into a housekeeping training camp? Hearing this almost made me want to throw my iced tea in anger. "Go on." Ivana continues the story haltingly. The house they were driven to, Sanaya's home, was cluttered with children's toys. First lesson in housekeeping cleaning. Apparently, she was told to clean the scattered toys. Next is the shower room, and also the toilet. While Ivana was doing the work, Sanaya, claiming to be supervising her housekeeping skills, was spending time with Lloyd in the living room. Isn't this basically using your partner for menial tasks under the guise of visiting home? Doesn't it feel like harassment? When I pressed for more details, "That's not all." Fresh tears streamed down from Ivana's eyes. "They told me to make dinner for Sanaya's family of 4 plus the 2 of us. Just using what was in the fridge. I've never cooked for 6 people before. I thought I would learn how to cook as we went along in our marriage. I couldn't even come up with a menu." Ivana's ordeal continued. "So I found some eggplant in the fridge and tried to look up recipes on a cooking community website on my phone. Then Sanaya said, 'You should be able to cook by eye. Using your phone is unacceptable.' She took my phone away and said, 'This is a failure. I'm going to need to give you some intensive training. We're changing all our vacation plans to stay at our house.' The entire vacation? Even one day would be ridiculous, but the whole vacation. So that was it. Apparently, she took back her phone and returned home, sobbing. What even is this?" Ivana was really looking forward to their honeymoon. The hotel had a sparkling pool and a view of the beautiful ocean. They must have been excited to try poke balls and Hawaiian plate lunches. But Lloyd and Sanaya trampled over those dreams so easily. Then, Ivana, tears streaming down her face, brought up a suggestion. "Interesting. Sounds like a plan." I decided to support Ivana with all my might. As soon as the honeymoon was over, Ivana received a call from Lloyd. "We're coming over tomorrow to discuss how we're going to live from now on." When Ivana asked, "What do you mean by how we're going to live?" "You failed as Lloyd's partner, so we need to discuss what's next. Seth said you're a total failure in the kitchen. We need to talk specifics. Seth is coming with me. So listen carefully and think about where you went wrong." What? Reflect on my actions? I was about to explode with anger at that arrogant and unreasonable demand. but them coming over actually works in my favor. I decided to handle this calmly. Finally, the day of the confrontation arrived, and Sanaya and Lloyd showed up. Well, Ivana, done any reflecting? Lloyd starts off with arrogance right away. The serious demeanor he had during our first meeting seemed to have flown away. For now, please, come in. I led the two of them into the living room. Now, let's start the Ivana's partner test. I called out loudly for my husband, who was waiting in the other room. All right. My husband walks in holding a yoga mat, a confident smile on his face. Gotta keep in shape to protect the family. First, we're going to work on our core and back muscles. My husband has recently become concerned with aging and started going to the gym. With thrice weekly workouts guided by a personal trainer, he's got a solid chest, even at 60. Alright, we're doing push-ups on this mat. It's a competition. Lower yourself down for 3 seconds, count slowly, and then push back up. That's 1 rep. If you don't stay down for 3 seconds, you won't engage your core muscles. Lloyd, who appears to have never worked out a day in his life, is utterly shocked. If you're saying Ivana needs a Lloyd's partner test, then I'm going to test if you're fit to be Ivana's partner. Keeping in shape is important for family support and child rearing too. Now, place your hands slightly wider than shoulder width apart and get into a push-up position. Come on, hurry up. It felt like boot camp, as if a merciless drill sergeant was waiting to put Lloyd through the ringer. Both my husband and Lloyd assume the push-up position. And 1. At that moment, Lloyd collapses onto the floor and can't get back up. He's stuck to the floor like a squashed frog. Ha ha ha, you can do it. I can do 50, you know. My husband is breezily doing push-ups beside him. His glasses are askew, his tie is crooked. Lloyd remains collapsed. Alright, you're next. I turned to Sanaya, who was standing there, dumbfounded. What? Me too? Now it's Sanaya's turn to be surprised. You seem to be fond of my Ivana. I will be the judge of whether you have the ability as a mom and a wife, and whether you're fit to guide my Ivana. Yes, this was the retaliation plan that Ivana had suggested to me. Sanaya's home had mold growing in the shower, and her toys were just pushed to the side. She wasn't exactly in a position to teach me how to clean. Based on what Ivana told me, I had formulated a plan. Then, I forcefully pulled Sanaya into the living room. I've lifted dirty just for you. This is your test. Now, start cleaning. Sanaya tried to deflect, saying, I came here for a discussion from Hawaii. Huh? Didn't you make Ivana do chores under the guise of guidance and steal her leisure time? Well, I'm just returning the favor. Clean up quickly and call me when you're done. The next test awaits. I go back to the living room and make some good tea. I hand a cup to Ivana, who's quietly watching the plan unfold, and we both sit on the sofa. Meanwhile, Lloyd is struggling with his workout and getting berated by my husband. His neatly styled hair is now a mess. After a while, Sanaya returns to the living room. I've finished cleaning. Oh, that was quick, she says, peeking into the bathroom. It had taken her nearly an hour, so she must have done a decent job. At first glance, it looks clean, but there are clear traces of water streaks on the walls. If you don't wipe the water off shiny surfaces immediately, they'll get cloudy. Don't you even know that? Especially the mirror. It will get those white water stains. And you dare call yourself Ivana's mentor? I gave it to her, holding nothing back. Sanaya tried to make an excuse, saying, there's no mirror in my home's shower room. Well, I've heard from Ivana, who cleaned your house, that there indeed was a mirror. I quickly shot back. And she said there was also a lot of black mold. Clearly, you've been neglecting it. Sanaya was left without a comeback, but I couldn't let her off the hook that easily. Alright, next up is sewing. Get to the sewing machine. What? Just as she thought she could relax after cleaning, another task was upon her. A sewing machine is a must, isn't it? I've heard your child is still small, but it's a given. I grinned as I picked up some leftover quilted fabric from when I made Ivana's lunch bag ages ago. Sanaya and I headed to the craft room upstairs. Peeking into the living room, I saw Lloyd was still getting a serious workout. He might even pull a muscle or something. You'll make a simple bag with this fabric? I've already done the cutting for you. Aren't I kind? A sewing machine, you say? You're not going to tell me you've never used one, are you? You can do all sorts of housework, right? I took Sanaya's hand and made her sit in front of the sewing machine. I, don't know how to thread it. Sanaya looked down, clearly uncomfortable. Excuse me? So, about threading the machine. What? I can't thread it. I looked down at Sanaya, who was frozen in front of the sewing machine, and chuckled in disbelief. You claim to be a mentor, but you don't even know this. Ivana, come here. I called to Ivana downstairs. Coming! Ivana arrives. This lady here, she doesn't know the first thing about sewing. As I smirked, oh dear, Sanaya, like this. Ivana threaded the machine for her. Sanaya's face turned beet red, as if she couldn't bear the humiliation. Now, go ahead. Surrounded by the two of us, Sanaya started the sewing machine. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The stitching was all over the place. Pfft! I couldn't help but burst out laughing at her poor attempt. Ivana was also holding back a laugh, looking down. Some stitches were too deep, and others weren't aligned at all. Ivana, show her how it's done, will you? Sure, but usually you should do a securing stitch at the edge first. Well, it can't be helped, can it? She started sewing without any know-how. Our so-called leader here knows nothing. Ivana skillfully operated the sewing machine, stitching it straight. Having loved sewing from a young age and being in the sewing club through middle and high school, this was a piece of cake for Ivana. Watching that, Sanaya grumbled, You can just pay someone at a craft store to sew a bag for you. Really? Then what's the difference between outsourcing your sewing to a craft store and replacing your lack of cooking skills with supermarket pre-made meals? There are things you can do that Ivana can't, and vice versa. Stop making excuses and picking and choosing to suit your convenience. I said just that and headed down to the living room. On the first floor, Lloyd was still sprawled on the floor. It looked like he couldn't even get up anymore. Beside me, my husband was striking some sort of muscle pause. Alright, let's have a talk. All of us. Still trembling with humiliation, Sanaya managed to take a seat on the sofa, along with Lloyd, who had somehow managed to get up. Ivana, my husband, and I sat across from them. First, take a look at this. I laid out the sewing pieces from both Sanaya and Ivana on the table for everyone to see and compare. It's downright hilarious that someone who can only produce something this shoddy would act like they're in charge. Lloyd stared at his sister's wobbly stitching, completely stunned. That said it all. Sanaya was at loss for words, her hands trembling. This one's a mess too. Unbelievable that they only had Ivana do the special training. This time, it was Dad who laid into Lloyd. You've been going on about women, but we really have to question how you're doing as a man yourself, I added, driving the point home. Okay, this is probably a good place to stop. That's right, I remembered something Ivana and I had agreed upon that day. Ivana, go ahead and bring it out. Ivana presented some documents. It's not a quick divorce or anything, but I just can't go on with you anymore. I'm glad I realized it sooner rather than later. Ivana stated it firmly. What? Their voices of surprise came out in unison. Both widened their eyes, flustered and mouths moving, but no words coming out. Hold on, I was thinking of forgiving you as long as you showed some remorse. Finally, Lloyd spoke up. Sure, I can't cook, but that's not something I need to be sorry about. Devoting all our honeymoon to training and bringing in Sanaya, it's all just too absurd. I can't be with you anymore. Ivana started signing the papers with a pen. Wait, so it's my fault that you're getting a divorce? All I did was point out your flaws. Now it was Sanaya's turn to panic. Ivana shook her head. I never said I can't cook. I was planning on learning eventually. Besides, she paused for a moment. Just like I have things I can and cannot do, so does Sanaya. Judging that slowly based on your own convenience and standards is wrong, she said, setting the record straight. I went in for the kill too. You can't even sew or clean acting all high and mighty. Plus, you ruined the honeymoon and treated Ivana like a servant. I am too embarrassed to be related to you. Just sign the divorce papers and get out. And so, Ivana came back to our home. Sanaya got divorced because she was terrible at housekeeping. How dare she continuously harass Ivana, claiming to be some sort of mom or Lloyd's partner without even considering her own flaws. This is what we call personal responsibility. Meanwhile, Lloyd kept making mistakes at work due to his inconsiderate personality. He even said something insensitive to a female coworker like, "These documents are a mess. Are you not in the mood to work just because you're feeling unwell?" He faced severe disciplinary action and was suspended from work. Would you come back? If you reflect on this, I believe we can start over. And I feel like I could even get my position back at work. It seems like Ivana kept getting messages from Lloyd pressuring her to get back together, despite showing no signs of remorse. That's not gonna happen. I'm getting married. With that, she promptly cut off communication. Yes, Ivana is set to remarry in 6 months. Her new partner is also a businessman, similar to before, but much more easygoing. He's into ab rolling and has a fit physique. As long as I can eat, I'm good. When they dine together, they get excited talking about things like protein for bodybuilding. Ivana, who's now seriously learning to cook, joins her in the kitchen. I mean, I could at least make scrambled eggs. While making sandwiches for work, Ivana recalls those days. It's okay, don't worry about it. You'll get the hang of it as you go along. With that, I seasoned the dish just by eyeballing it.
I'm Emma, and I'm 29 years old this year. My husband Jake is the same age, and we've been married for 3 years. We have occasional quarrels, but we've always respected each other and got along. Both my husband and I work full-time. We were quite content with our jobs, but as our 3rd wedding anniversary was approaching, we started to consider having children. I've decided to get married. Then, out of the blue, my brother suddenly announced. Not only I, but also my parents were taken aback by the sudden news. My brother David is 35. He works at a reputable company and is a sincere and kind older brother I'm proud of. However, he had never mentioned having a girlfriend before. Everyone was astonished when my brother, who has always been somewhat detached from the opposite sex, suddenly announced his own intention to marry. As we dug deeper into the story, we learned that his girlfriend of 6 months was pregnant, and they had decided to marry quickly. What's she like? She's lively and forthright. Well, since David is more of a laid-back type, maybe someone like her would be a much better match, our mother said with a chuckle, and our father nodded with a wry smile. Despite the surprise of a shotgun wedding, it was delightful news. They had already met her parents, and they asked us to meet her family soon. Can I come too? Of course. I'd appreciate it if you and Jake could come. David often visited my husband and me because they got along so well. In fact, I think he enjoyed spending time with my husband more than me. I think Jake will be happy too. Congratulations on your wedding, brother. Thanks, David responded, blushing slightly as he smiled. His happiness seemed infectious, and I felt joy too. Then came the day of meeting with the bride's family. We, my parents and us, a couple, were waiting in the hotel lobby. Sorry to keep you waiting. David arrived a little after the agreed-upon time, looking a bit flustered. A few minutes later, David's girlfriend and her parents arrived. Her name was Misty, who I heard was 33, 2 years younger than my brother. In person, she looked even younger. Maybe it was because she was more beautiful and a bit flashier than I had imagined. My name is Misty. Nice to meet you, she said in a slightly nasal voice. Hearing her voice, my husband exclaimed, Huh? What's the matter? No, it's nothing, he replied after some thought, shaking his head. Despite his odd behavior, the meeting went smoothly. My husband's unusual demeanor was worrisome, but I turned to Misty when addressed. Emma, right? Let's get along, shall we? Yes, I hope we can be good friends too. With her warm smile, I found myself smiling back. Although I sensed something was off about my husband, I momentarily pushed that aside, relieved to see that my brother's wife-to-be seemed to be a pleasant person. However, I was soon to realize that my instinct about my husband was right. After their marriage registration, my brother announced they were planning to have a wedding ceremony. It was the fervent wish of his wife, he said. I understood their sentiment. It was a once-in-a-lifetime event. She was already pregnant, and my brother wanted to fulfill her wish, so they decided to hurry and hold the ceremony before her belly got too big. I was surprised when I heard they managed to secure a date for the ceremony a few months from now due to a cancellation. The couple decided to live in my brother's house, about an hour's drive from ours. One day, during a weekday off, the doorbell unexpectedly rang while I was home. Hello there. Misty? It was my brother's wife standing at the door. Aside from dropping off some items, she had never visited our house before. I came to visit. You're off today, aren't you? Leaving me bewildered, she boldly stepped into the house. I hurriedly followed her in, finding her curiously looking around the house. Is my brother? Of course, he's at work. It's a weekday. That wasn't the point of my question, but she started talking before I could clarify. I'm just bored at home. You must be bored too, being home alone. Hey, I'm thirsty. Can you make me some tea? Feeling awkward, I went to prepare some tea, but when I came back, she had closed the windows and turned on the air conditioning. Tea is not good during pregnancy, right? I'm sorry, I don't have any caffeine-free options at home. Only mineral water. Oh well, it can't be helped. Sorry. For some reason, I found myself apologizing as I handed her the mineral water. She sipped it, glancing around the room with a small smile on her face. What a small house. Excuse me? Hey, I heard you guys didn't have a wedding, right? I was taken aback by the abrupt change in topic. We got married almost 3 years ago, and yes, we never had a ceremony. When we were discussing a wedding after getting married, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Luckily, we hadn't made any reservations yet. We had a long discussion, including whether we should have a ceremony at all, and in the end, we decided not to. Neither of us was particular about having a wedding, and we agreed to save the money for our future home instead. We explained this to both sets of parents and appeased them by agreeing to have wedding photos taken. Well, we weren't in a position to have one when we got married, but you still haven't had one, right? We decided together. Well, I guess you have to say that, don't you? She let out a dramatic sigh, resting her cheek in her hand. There was a slight smirk on her face. Poor thing, not even having a wedding ceremony. She exaggeratedly declared that, not giving me a chance to retort. It's not that we couldn't have a wedding ceremony, but she didn't give me a chance to interject. So small a home and no wedding ceremony. Have you had kids yet? Well, truly pitiful. But what else could we expect looking at you? I thought I'd misheard. But after seeing my sister-in-law's mocking grin, I realized she indeed uttered those words. Indeed, compared to my sister-in-law, I wasn't especially beautiful. I wasn't gorgeous or cute, nothing to write home about. This was the first time anyone had belittled me to my face like this. After that, she often visited on my days off and kept belittling me. Looking at the glass in the kitchen, she'd comment, "Truly a mess, but I suppose it can't be helped if you're busy at work, can it?" And on days when I wasn't wearing makeup because I was off, "Maybe you should wear makeup even on your days off." Well, even with makeup, there's only so much you can do. Maybe that's why your husband doesn't see you as a woman. Every time she saw my actions, my home, my appearance, she'd laugh triumphantly and make snide comments. It wasn't outright ridicule, but she belittled me with the pretense of sympathy. She was my brother's wife, and their wedding was just around the corner. I felt like I shouldn't escalate things, so I didn't say anything to my brother or my husband. However, the stress of being ridiculed repeatedly was overwhelming, and my husband began to worry about me more and more. "You seem to have lost your appetite, and your complexion doesn't look good. Maybe you should see a doctor." My husband kept saying this, and although I pushed back at first, I finally gave in. I thought it was stress, but recently I've been feeling dizzy, and my body won't accept food. I went to the hospital just in case, and I was in for a surprise. "What's going on? Suddenly calling everyone together like this?" My mother seemed uneasy because I had called my parents and my brother's family to our room. Looking at my mother's nervousness, my husband and I shared a small laugh. "Actually, I'm pregnant." The first thing I thought when the doctor mentioned the possibility of pregnancy was, "No way." I thought it was time to consider having children, but recently it was the last thing on my mind. What I thought was stress was actually morning sickness. Pregnant? Yes, I'm still in the early stages. "Emma!" Suddenly, my brother raised his voice and gave me and my husband next to me a strong hug. When I turned around in surprise, I saw that his eyes were filled with tears. "Congratulations! I'm so happy, as if it were happening to me." "Big brother?" Seeing my brother's reaction made me tear up as well. My parents joined in crying, and afterwards we all shared a laugh. As we were all talking happily as a family, I suddenly felt a gaze on me. "Huh?" When I turned towards the gaze and gasped, my sister-in-law was glaring at me with a scary expression. "You know, Misty." After returning home, my husband started speaking with a hesitant look. I feel like she was glaring at you with a scary look. So, my husband also saw her face. Afterwards, when my brother spoke to my sister-in-law, she answered with a quickly constructed smile, so I thought I was the only one who saw it. Looking at my worried husband, I thought it might be better to keep quiet. Actually, ever since my brother got married, his wife often came over unannounced, and each time she continued to make snide remarks. As I choked on my words, recalling the emotions of those moments, my husband quietly listened. So I want to keep a distance for a while. I think I should keep my distance too. Yeah, but she might come over to our house all of a sudden. What should we do? What about going back to your parents' house for a while? My parents' house? Yeah, you've been struggling with morning sickness. Can you commute to work from there? If you do that, I'll feel relieved knowing you're at your parents' house. My husband reassured me, and I breathed a sigh of relief. We have no intention of telling my parents about this right now. I don't want to rain on the parade of my newlywed brother, and I don't want to blow this out of proportion. But right now, I can use my morning sickness as an excuse to return home. Still, why is she attacking you so much? I have no idea. The first time I met her was at the pre-wedding meeting. The next time I met her, she was like that, and I really don't understand why. I feel like I've seen her before. Huh? Where? My husband had reacted strangely when we first met her. I can't be for certain. Although he evades, he says he'd like to look into it if he can. A few days later, we were to learn a shocking truth. Back at my parents' house, my husband frequently visited, and there were no more attacks from my sister-in-law. It was peaceful. Just as my morning sickness was calming down and the wedding day arrived without a hitch. We were getting ready at home, later than my parents, who had left early. When we were about to leave, my sister-in-law called. You've already prepared? Yes, we're about to head out. Sorry, we don't have a seat for you. Huh? My family and friends are coming today. I'd be embarrassed if they thought you were my family, so don't come to the ceremony. What? You might dress up, but you know, with a background like yours, expectations are low. She was laughing on the other end of the phone. I'm the star of the day, you understand that, right? Does my brother know about this? Of course. He can't say no to me. Understood. But I'd like to talk after the ceremony. I'll consider it. Give me the gift later, okay? She hung up after having her say. My husband was looking puzzled at me, standing in stunned silence. Misty said, "It would be embarrassing if I came to the wedding, so don't come." Tears started flowing as I spoke, unable to hold back. Are you serious? But it's my brother's wedding, and he agreed to it. As my husband comforted me by gently rubbing my back, he exhaled, as if he had made up his mind. Let's investigate the facts and talk to David properly. David is not the kind of person who would tell you not to come to the wedding. My husband seemed quite angry. We also need to clarify that. It would be better for David as well. I understand. Thank you. 1 week after the wedding, my sister-in-law came alone to the restaurant I had called her to. Huh? She seemed surprised not just to see me there. And it's understandable. It wasn't just my husband and me. My parents, my brother, and even her own parents were all there. Why? I didn't hear anything. Is there something going on today? Yes, you told me to hand over the gift, right? Really? It was a joke. Did you need to go to this extent? I have something to discuss before I hand it over. It seemed suspicious to her that no one else was speaking. Her gaze was frantically shifting around the room. Misty, you worked for Sunrise Systems before your marriage, didn't you? And so what? Why did you quit? It's obvious, isn't it? I was getting married and having a baby. I thought my husband had accepted that. Why bring it up now? Accepted? I didn't say anything about her quitting. But to suddenly quit just because she's pregnant without discussing it first? My brother sighed in exasperation. But that's old news, right? At that point, my husband chimed in. Actually, Sunrise Systems, where she worked, is a client of my company. They're almost like a subsidiary, so we get quite a bit of inside information. What? Seemingly at a loss for words, my sister-in-law fell silent as my husband spoke. I thought she looked familiar. She had an affair with a married supervisor at her workplace. Felt uncomfortable and quit, right? Weren't your parents aware of that as well? As he looked at my in-laws, they let out a deep sigh. We apologize. She cried and said she was forced into the relationship by her boss. We believed her. We're really sorry. We thought it was all in the past. With heads bowed deeply, my sister-in-law's parents apologized. What the hell? I was forced by my boss. That's what I said. It's all in the past now. Past? The sound of my brother's voice low as a rumble of thunder, my sister-in-law trembled. He sighed heavily and laid several photos out in front of everyone. How are you going to explain these? The photos showed my sister-in-law and a middle-aged man, arm in arm, entering a hotel together. I was shocked to hear from my sister and her husband after the wedding that your affair with your old boss is still ongoing. Within only a week, my brother had gathered a lot of evidence. Right after the wedding, we consulted with my brother about my sister-in-law, passing on all the information we had. We told him that we had been uninvited from the wedding, that she had been nasty to us long before that, and that she had quit her job due to an affair. My brother had been told by my sister-in-law that I wasn't at the wedding because I had severe morning sickness. My brother apologized for everything she did, even though he had done nothing wrong. When I asked him what he was going to do, he said he would look into it himself. And a week later, when my brother told me he was ready, I called my sister-in-law. My brother had called our parents and her parents here himself. This... Everyone knows. That's why we called her here. As my sister-in-law tried to snatch away the photos in panic, she froze in despair upon hearing those words. You've also been bullying my sister. Why? With a sullen look on her face, my sister-in-law muttered, It's just, despite being so much less attractive than me, she looked so happy. Her family is so close-knit, too. She should be satisfied with that. But she even got pregnant. Well, I'm the one who should be the center of attention. So that's why you didn't invite her to the wedding? Of course. It's my wedding. It's strange to have someone else being congratulated. Everyone was at a loss for words at the sight of my sister-in-law, who nonchalantly justified her actions. Let's divorce. No. Do you think you have the right to say no? But I have a baby. How are you going to take responsibility? She stood up, placed her hands on her stomach, and shouted, If it's my child, of course I'll continue to pay child support, even after the divorce. If it's really my child. After that, my brother and his wife divorced. She put up quite a fuss, but given her actions leading to the divorce, it was clear she was at a disadvantage. No court proceedings were necessary. When she was told she'd be legally accountable for a reasonable sum of money if they went to court, she conceded for a smaller amount. After the child was born, a DNA test showed that my brother wasn't the father. "Figures," my brother said, looking a bit pained. Because the child was born within 300 days of the divorce, by law the child was considered to be David's, my brother. It's a bit of a hassle that parentage can't be denied without going through civil litigation. But with the DNA test results in hand, there's no need to worry. The ex-wife continued her relationship with her former boss unabashedly and was thoroughly chastised when the boss wife found out. Apparently, this was the second time the wife found out. The first was when she quit her job, and now again when she decided to divorce. The first time their parents had intervened, but after this incident, it seems she's been abandoned even by them. For some reason, the ex-wife has been contacting my brother for help, he mentioned in a tired voice. Nearly a year after that incident, the phone rang. "Hello? What do you think you're doing?" The ex-wife's shrill voice echoed in my ears. My husband looked at me in surprise as our child lay sleeping in the crib. The ex-sister-in-law seemed out of sorts, frantic. "It's your fault for never picking up, no matter how many times I've called. You've made me miserable, so I'm going to make you miserable too," she screamed over and over. "Your current situation is your own making. Shut up! I won't be satisfied until you've gone through the same. If you keep playing dead, I'll burn down this entire apartment." I paled at the ex-wife's threats. My husband, who had been listening beside me, immediately reported it to the police. Then the ex-wife was arrested. The police arrived in time to prevent the arson, but since she couldn't get into our house, she had damaged our door and windows, seemingly caught in the act of vandalism. After that, fearing the ex-wife's stalking behavior, we decided to go ahead with our long-planned home build and moved there. We no longer live in the apartment the ex-wife knew about. That, at least, was a relief. We got busy with things like child rearing, but we're leading a lively and enjoyable life. My brother comes to visit and plays with our child. Apparently, my brother has someone he likes recently, and occasionally he consults with my husband and me, blushing a bit. "Let us meet her before you decide to get married this time, okay?" I joked, to which my brother responded with a wry smile, saying, "I'm counting on it."
I have my husband wrapped around my finger now. Ah, being beautiful is such a sin. What? That's a lie. You didn't notice until now? Well, he's mine now. Richard falls for this woman, and with that, everything we've built up until now comes crashing down. Is Richard really okay with this? More importantly, does he even understand what's going on? Everything goes dark before my eyes. My name is Taylor, a 45-year-old woman this year. Currently, I work as a yoga instructor in the suburbs of Tokyo. When people hear yoga instructor, they might imagine something glamorous, but that's usually only for young female instructors. To be honest, older instructors like myself in their 50s don't usually have that much popularity. That's why my life depends on my husband's income. My husband Richard is 48 years old, older than me. At 48, most people worry about the results of their health checkup and are fearful of being diagnosed with the metabolic syndrome. But Richard is different. He has a radiant complexion, full head of hair, and most importantly, a toned body that's free from metabolic syndrome at the age of 48. He's my proud husband. When I show Richard's photo to my classmates at the yoga studio, most people are surprised and end up comparing him to their own husbands. That's why I always start with a sales pitch. Like, if you bring your husband to my yoga class, he'll transform into someone who looks like this. It's become a staple for me. Richard and I met through my work as a yoga instructor with him as my student. Outside of work, I'm a housewife who takes care of things while he's away. That's been my daily routine, and I thought it would continue like that until that woman showed up. Our daily lives changed completely because of her. It all started with a regular yoga trial course. One day, I recognized from somewhere was in the class. I wonder if I met her before. If she's a former student, it would be rude not to say hello. I thought to myself, struggling to remember where I had seen her before. But I just couldn't seem to remember, even though I thought I was good at remembering faces. I started feeling down, thinking maybe I'm getting old and can't remember people's faces anymore. But looking back now, maybe deep down, I didn't want to remember her. Because she was such a terrible woman. The answer came from her. During a break, the same woman came up to me and started talking. Long time no see. Hey, do you remember me? When I saw her grinning face, I finally remembered. This woman in front of me was my classmate, Alan. Alan and I grew up in the same neighborhood and played together since we were little. Alan, who was cute and adorable in both her appearance and behavior, was well known in our town, and people used to say this girl could become an idol in the future. It sounds like a parent's exaggeration, but she really was popular among people in our town at the time. And Alan's reputation was outstanding in another sense. She would take people's belongings without permission, from favorite erasers to umbrellas and dolls. It was just the beginning. As she grew older, stealing someone's boyfriend became an everyday occurrence. That's why she was highly regarded by men but greatly disliked by women. And to tell the truth, I was one of those who disliked Alan. Having known her since childhood and being close to her family, I was her primary victim of theft. And now she's right in front of me. Alan's family moved away when we were in junior high, and we lost touch after that. How on earth did she find out about me? Although I had a bad feeling inside, I kept my usual business smile on my face. Could it be Alan? Long time no see. Of course I remember you, I said with a forced smile. I moved to this town, you know, and when I saw the poster for the yoga class, I thought I've seen that face before. But looks don't matter for a yoga instructor, huh? If someone like you can do it, then I might be able to do it too. This woman hasn't changed, even at this age. Listening to the words that came out of Alan's mouth, I quickly realized. And today, at the trial class, I decided not to mention my husband in my usual sales talk. It's no joke to have my life partner stolen at this age, and the woman who could do such a thing is Alan. It happened after the trial class that day. I was caught trying to leave quickly to avoid Alan and ended up having a late lunch with her. As soon as we sat down, Alan's endless boasting began under the guise of updating me on her life. Apparently, she had a hard time with many men hitting on her after moving and was even scouted by a certain idol agency. Alan kept talking forever, with stories that were hard to tell whether they were true or false, ignoring her lunch. As the conversation dragged on, it seemed she just wanted to show off her current life. You know, living on the top floor of a tower apartment isn't as great as it sounds. The elevator rides are long, and the people living on the lower floors are always making snide remarks. It's the worst, right? But what's even worse is my husband. He's a lawyer and makes good money, but his looks. He's the same age as me and a fat, out-of-shape guy. Well, thanks to him, I could be a stay-at-home wife. But being a stay-at-home wife is tough too. Oh, you wouldn't be able to handle that kind of life, would you? I mean, even at your age, you're still a yoga instructor. While saying it's the worst, her face was clearly soaked in a sense of superiority. Wasn't that husband of hers stolen from someone else too? Suppressing the urge to say that, I quietly played the listener. If I didn't react interestingly, Alan would get bored, or so I thought. Did you manage to get married? What? Really? What kind of person is your husband? Is he a plain, unattractive, out-of-shape guy like you? I could not help but get angry at Alan's words that seemed to mock me. I felt that my happy, precious days were being denied by her words. And above all, I wanted to see Alan's reaction when I showed her my husband. My husband is 48 years old this year, but he doesn't look it at all, right? He often gets mistaken as someone in their 20s by my students. He works for a foreign financial institution, and his earnings are, well, decent for that industry, I guess. Alan stared intently at the photo of my husband I showed her while saying this. As I looked at Alan's face, I felt both regret for having done it and a small sense of victory over Alan. But that feeling of victory was fleeting. Wow, I might like this guy. I had done it. Alan's words were a signal that she had found her prey. My sense of superiority over Alan disappeared immediately, leaving only regret. But it's okay. She doesn't know where I live or my contact information yet. If I leave without telling her anything, it'll be fine. Suppressing my rising anxiety, I continued to chat casually with Alan, pretending nothing was wrong. Of course, beneath our casual conversation was a battle between Alan trying to get more information about my husband and me trying to avoid it. I managed to end the conversation without giving Alan any information. I felt relieved that it worked out and went home that day, but Alan started coming to my yoga classes more often, trying to learn more. Each time I dodged Alan's questions and eventually started avoiding conversation with her altogether. Perhaps, sensing my attitude, one day Alan suddenly stopped coming to the yoga classes. I did it. That woman finally gave up. We may have been successful when we were younger, but now we're both middle-aged women in our 40s. There's no way things will go our way at this age. Serves her right. I grabbed a sense of victory this time and made a small victory pose. However, at that time, the real winner was not me, but Alan, because she had already gotten close to my husband, Richard. After that, my peaceful everyday life continued for a while. I sweated as a yoga instructor and devoted myself to housework as a good wife, supporting Richard at home. It was so peaceful that I completely forgot about Alan's recent visit. In retrospect, it must have been the calm before the storm. While I was spending my days in peace, I was slightly concerned about the change in Richard's attitude. Sorry, I don't need a lunchbox for a while. I'm going to have a lunch with a client. Or, sorry, I've been busy with work lately. I'll be home late, so eat dinner without me. Oh, I forgot. I'll eat dinner on the way home, so don't worry about my portion. He used to prioritize family over home and come home right away. But if it's work, there's nothing I can do. Richard's hard work might lead to a better treatment at work. As a wife who protects the home, all I can do is support Richard. Besides, at the same time, I started teaching a new evening course at the yoga studio, so I didn't have much time to think deeply about it. So I believed what Richard said. And at the time, I believed that both of us being busy with work was a good thing and didn't doubt it. In hindsight, I was really stupid. One day, after a busy stretch, Alan appeared at the yoga studio. During class, for some reason, she kept giving me a smug look. It was the face that I hated the most. Class ended, and as I was cleaning up alone, Alan came over. Mocking my defensive stance and with a confident smile, she said, "Your husband is such a wonderful man, isn't he? His gestures while eating are cool, and his dimples when he laughs are so cute. Oh, did you know he has a funny mole on his back, that guy?" So that's what it was. The reason this woman disappeared from my sight wasn't that she had given up on my husband Richard, but that she had already succeeded in getting close to him. The gestures while eating and The dimples when laughing mean they have shared meals together many times? Could it be that Richard not taking his lunchbox with him lately is because of that? But the bigger issue is the funny mole on his back. If I connect the fact that he showed her his back and that Richard has been coming home late recently smelling like soap, the answer is obvious. This woman has already slept with Richard many times. I shuddered. What are you suddenly saying? Besides, I don't remember introducing you to my husband, so why are you meeting Richard? Aren't you stupid? Even if you don't tell me, I can find out from the other students in the class. You are such a fool. I just asked those students for your address, staked it out for a few days, and I knew everything about your husband. After all, you have that photo of the husband you boast and show off. Now Richard is captivated by me. Being beautiful is like a sin. No, that can't be. Didn't you notice until now? I'm taking him. Richard will be taken by this woman. If that happens, everything I've built up until now will be gone. Is Richard really okay with that? Rather, does he even understand what's going on? My vision went dark. As I thought about the possibility of losing everything we had built together and Richard's feelings, Alan left, laughing at me, clutching my stomach in disbelief. I was left alone in the classroom. Calm down and ask Richard for confirmation. It could just be Alan's solution. More than anything, I wanted to confirm Richard's true feelings. What will he do with everything we've built up so far? And above all, what do you think of me now? That day, when I confronted Richard after he returned home, he easily said, "Sorry, everything Alan said is true. I might have done something wrong to you, but you're the one who's bad. Your cooking is always tasteless, and you never compliment me when I come home from work. Besides, you always order me around, telling me to exercise and use this lotion. In contrast, Alan is kind. Unlike you, she always tells me I'm cool and her cooking is delicious. It's so different from you." Wait a minute. The seasoning of the dishes and the exercise. It's all for you. And yet you talk like that. What about the promises we made about work? You said at the time. Richard interrupted me and yelled, "Shut up! It's all your fault. You're always bossing me around, telling me to do this and that. I don't need a woman like you anymore." We're married, aren't we? Let's just talk it out properly. I have my reasons for asking you to do various things. You're so annoying. Enough already. Today I'm going to Alan's house. Alan is different from you. She's kind and doesn't boss me around. With that, Richard left the house. Left alone, I sighed. I never thought Richard felt that way. It's true that I've asked Richard for various things. But to Richard, did it seem like I was ordering him around? Still, it was all for Richard's sake. Everything I've done for Richard was denied by the very person I did it for. That being said, I think the way he said it was honestly too much. Blaming everything on me and insisting I'm not the one at fault. And finally, I'm going to Alan's place where she'll treat me kindly? What kind of elementary schooler is he? I can't believe this is coming from a man who's almost 50 years old. Is that Richard's true nature? I admit my words and actions were bad, but looking back at Richard's attitude just now, my love for him cooled off all at once. Rather, he's head over heels for Alan, and it seems like he doesn't care about me anymore. That's when I realized, if that's the case, I'll just hand Richard over to Alan completely. If I do that, I might be able to get back at Alan twice over for all the grudges I've held so far. Recalling Alan's face when she laughed at me, I made up my mind. Next time, it's my turn to laugh. I'll get back at that woman twice over. Alan just came to the yoga class the next day as well. Just like yesterday, she looked at me with a smug expression throughout the class. That smile won't last long. I reassured myself and calmed my emotions. When the class ended, Alan approached me just like yesterday. Today, I have a date with Richard. I don't know why, but he stayed at my house yesterday, and now we feel like a real married couple. Oh, I'm sorry. The real wife is right here. If you like Richard that much, go ahead. He doesn't seem to love me anymore, so I'll let you have him. Alan, who wanted to see my frustrated face, looked taken aback for a moment, but that was short-lived. Well, giving up so easily is quite the defeatist attitude. But of course, he's already captivated by me. Weren't you married too? Have you talked to your husband about this? Huh? I can handle that flabby guy. I'm currently setting him up for an affair, and I'll use that as a leverage to break up with him cleanly. How despicable. That's what I thought, taking whatever she wants and discarding it as soon as she's done with it. I feel so sorry for her husband. Well then, I'll really take Richard. Plain and dull women always lose, don't they? A woman like you can only look forward to a lonely old age all by yourself. With that declaration of victory, Alan left. Let her say what she wants. I had Richard write the divorce papers that day. Richard must have already heard about today's events from Alan. He signed the papers without asking any questions. And as I watched him, I thought about how anticlimactic the end of our once happy life together was. But I don't want any regrets. Before Richard and I changed our minds, we both signed the divorce papers and submitted them to the city office right away. Now I'm single. I rented a place nearby, and for a while I lived a comfortable life alone. That being said, I couldn't rely on just my yoga instructor income, so I had to dip into the savings little by little. However, while living alone without fear of the future, I was in touch with someone. All I had to do was wait for a reply. A few months later, Alan came to my yoga class, but this time she came after the class was over. As soon as she came out to me, Alan burst into tears and said, "What's wrong with that man? He was so cool at first, but as soon as we got married, he got fat and his skin got rough. Now he's just a regular chubby middle-aged man. And his salary is low too. I had high hopes because he worked for a famous foreign financial firm. What's going on?" I had been waiting for this. With a smirk in my heart, I pretended to console Alan and told her, "Don't worry. Listen, the reason he was slim and smooth-skinned until now was all because of my meal management and exercise guidance. But since he left me and you spoiled him, he just returned to his true self. That's the real Richard. And while it's true that he worked for a foreign financial institution, it was actually a subsidiary of a related company. I just exaggerated that part. Yes, even before we got married, I had been paying attention to Richard's diet, and I made him a very well-balanced lunchbox every day. Of course, I also made him eat dinner at home, so I was able to manage all of Richard's meals. I also made him exercise and use men's skincare products like lotion for his skin. That's how he was able to maintain his youthful appearance, which was hard to believe he was in his 40s. But that all disappeared when we divorced, and his new wife, Alan, just spoiled Richard. I'm sure she didn't consider nutrition when cooking and didn't make him exercise either. It's only natural that he would return to his old self with that kind of lifestyle. What? So that man was only put together thanks to you? What's that? Don't worry, with your love, he can become a wonderful man again. But I don't really care. No way, I don't need an old man like that. You take him back. I was truly amazed at this woman's nerve treating people like objects. But of course, I had no intention of going back to how things were. Sorry, I've already found my new partner. Here's what he looks like. I showed Alan a picture of my new partner. The man on my smartphone was a tall, gentle-looking guy wearing a lawyer's badge. Wow, what a great guy. Hey, I'm more suited for him than you. Let's trade husbands, okay? Now it was my turn to burst out laughing. Why don't you ask him yourself? Please marry me. Please go back to how you were, because this man is your ex-husband. No way. How did that chubby man become such a great guy? You're lying. and I can't forgive you for being with him. She still said things like that. I was dumbfounded. I wasn't lying at all. After I divorced Richard and started living alone, the person I kept in touch with was none other than him. Of course, I was in contact with him to take revenge on Alan. First, I dramatically changed his appearance through my diet management and exercise guidance. This was, of course, to later make Alan feel regretful. However, this revenge was only the first stage. The second stage was yet to come. Did you forget that your ex-husband is a lawyer? I already told him that you fabricated his affair. I think a compensation claim from him will arrive at your place soon. What? That's a lie. Oh, and from me too. I filed a claim for consolation money for having an affair with my husband. Of course, I have the strongest lawyer, your ex-husband, on my side. I could hear Alan's small scream, but it was too late. Oops, I almost forgot. Richard got his current job back thanks to a connection at my yoga studio. I told that person about what happened, and they were very disappointed. Who knows what will happen to Richard's treatment now? Alan seemed to be at loss for words. I left Alan standing there and elegantly exited the classroom. Serves you right. She had taken so much from me, even stealing my husband this time. This was a deserved punishment. After a while, Alan had to pay a large sum of compensation due to our lawsuit. She sold the luxury tower apartment she had won in her divorce and now apparently lives in a cheap apartment with Richard. As I predicted, Richard's salary decreased even more after being demoted, and Alan had to find a part-time job. Some of my yoga students work at her part-time job, so I naturally talk about Alan there. Everyone says, "What a horrible woman. Teacher, you went through so much. We'll make sure she gets what she deserves." I wonder what kind of guidance we should give her. I'm looking forward to it. They say various encouraging things. As for me, I happily remarried Alan's ex-husband. Thanks to my dedicated diet management and exercise guidance, he has transformed dramatically from his previous overweight figure to being featured in magazines. Due to the effects, he now has an increased number of legal requests and is struggling to keep up, but he is so happy about it. Unlike Richard, he listens to my various advice and appreciates it. That's why I'm even more motivated to cook for him every day. Oh, and that tower apartment Alan gave up is now where we live. From the window of the tower apartment, Alan's apartment seems so small that it makes me laugh. My revenge is now over. From now on, I plan to live a peaceful and happy life with him.
Oh, there are poor people here. I can't stand to eat in the same place as these people. Let's complain to the waiter and ask him to kick them out. I agree. If we're around these people, we'll look low class. My sister and her husband, whom we ran into on our New Year's trip to Hawaii, decided that we were poor, and they bullied us. They would say, "Don't ignore us, you ugly bitch. This is no place for someone like you. You need to get the hell out of here." You're not my sister. What? You forgot about me, your cute little sister? I know you're still upset that I took your fiancé. You're so jealous of me. I heard you're still working. Working even after you're married? Poor you. The two of them started making fun of not only me, but also my husband. I could put up with it if it was just about me, but I couldn't stand listening to them make fun of my husband. I had had enough, and I sprang out of my chair, but my husband stood in front of me to stop me. My name is Katie. I work as a medical receptionist at a general hospital. I didn't have any special skills, but when I thought about my future, I knew I wanted to help people. That's when I decided to work in the medical field. After 2 years of studying at a vocational school, I found a job at a general hospital. My parents recognized my hard work and were proud of me for choosing a career in medical administration. But my sister's reaction was the exact opposite. She said, "This is a job that anyone could do, and it's perfect for you." She laughed. My sister Miley has always been like that. She looks down on me and makes fun of me on a regular basis. Miley is pretty. When we were in junior high, people called her the prettiest girl in her grade. She gets a lot of compliments, and she's always boasting about her looks. She calls me ugly and acts like I'm pitiful. If it seems like anyone can do it, I thought maybe I should do things only I can bring to the table. I try to smile all the time and be really polite and more cheerful than others. It sounds easy, but it's very difficult. But I was determined to do my job well, and I told myself that I will not fail. I was very happy to know that there were people out there who watched me and recognized it. "You're always energetic." Dr. Ken Smith, a doctor at the hospital, spoke to me. I rarely interact with doctors, but Dr. Smith knew my name. "Your smile always heals me, Katie." I thought it sounded a tiny bit inappropriate, but it was nice to be recognized. After that, we talked whenever we saw each other at the hospital, and a little while after that, Dr. Smith asked me out. After a few dates, he confessed his feelings for me and asked me to be his girlfriend. Shortly before my 22nd birthday, he asked me to marry him. "Will you marry me?" Ken proposed to me. I said yes, and we made plans to meet each other's parents. I'm glad I chose a job that helps people. I was happy to work at the hospital, but my happiness was shattered in a split second out of nowhere. "Don't worry about coming to my parents to meet them." 2 days before the day I was supposed to meet them, he sends me this out of the blue. I was confused, so I wrote back immediately. "Does it not work for their schedule or something? We can reschedule for another day." But Ken responded and said things that I never would have expected. "I said don't worry about coming. I'm breaking up with you, Katie." For a second, it felt like time stopped. I didn't know what he was saying. I immediately called him. "What do you mean? You met my parents." "Just act like it never happened. What's wrong? You said you'd keep working after we got married, and you didn't listen to me." "Well, I realized that I'd rather have an obedient woman than someone like you." It's like he was a different person. I was, of course, shocked that he broke up with me, but I couldn't believe how he changed all of a sudden. "What? You said my smile heals you. I can't believe you're breaking up with me after we got engaged." "Huh? That was just something I said to make you feel good. I chose you because you were the youngest, decent-looking woman at the time." "You're horrible." "I'm a doctor. There are better women out there more suitable for a doctor like me." "Who?" I had a bad feeling, and it was way worse than I thought it could be. "I'm going to marry Miley. I don't need you anymore." "Miley?" "I should have gone to your parents' house earlier. I could have met her a while ago instead of wasting a year of my life." I started thinking. When Ken came to my house to meet my parents, Miley was there too. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she stayed on purpose to meet my fiancé. At first, she seemed ready to make fun of him, but as soon as she realized that Ken is a doctor, her attitude changed. She spoke like she was flirting, but I had no idea that she was trying to steal my fiancé. I couldn't believe it. I was so mad at Ken and Miley, and I was also mad at myself for letting them push me around. I was speechless. Then Ken said mockingly, "You're so shocked you can't even say anything. You know, a woman like you won't find someone else to marry. But I'm sorry. I've already made up my mind that I'm going to marry young, pretty Miley. I won't change my mind even if you beg." "Who would beg you? Don't pretend like you're okay. It's obviously not true, and it's not a good look." "What?" "Unlike you, Miley is very obedient and cute, and she said she will be a housewife after we get married, just like I asked her." I was irritated by his cheerful voice. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Listen, I'm just going to be honest. Who would beg to be with a man like you? I've had it. I'm glad we're breaking up. I'm even more glad that I didn't marry a man like you. Well, you're just not cute. I was going to end it even if you cried and screamed. Well, good luck being a single woman. Ken hung up the phone after saying those hateful words. When I ended the call, I received a notification. It was from my sister and it said, "I'm sorry I took your fiance." When my parents found out, they disowned Miley and told her to never come back home. But Miley was still proud. My husband is a doctor. I won. I don't care that I'm cut off from the family. See you later, sis. Thanks for introducing me to Ken. Keep being ugly and poor and alone. I realized that they are perfect for each other. And again, I'm so glad I didn't marry Ken. Even after we broke up, I had no intention of quitting my job. But I couldn't stand to work at the same place as him, so I transferred to an affiliated hospital. I put even more effort into my work, trying to be polite and energetic and always smiling. Even receptionists can help patients in different ways than doctors. It's not a job that just anyone could do. I worked hard, almost in spite of Miley and Ken. 2 years after Ken and I split up, someone talked to me like he did. "You're always so energetic." Thank you. Although I said thank you, I was creeped out. He doesn't seem like he works at the hospital. He could be a patient or a family member. I didn't want to be a jerk, so I put a smile on my face, waiting for him to leave. But he didn't move. I said, how can I help you?" He smiled big. "I've always thought you have such a wonderful attitude toward your work. I'd like to talk to you more. Would you like to go to dinner with me?" "No, thanks." I turned to smile at him. He backed off that day, but this man was very stubborn. Tyler Morris showed up almost every week after that, inviting me out for dinner. Eventually, I gave in and went out with him. At that point, my bad impression of him had already faded. More importantly, he understood how important my work is to me. After a few dates, he asked me to be in a relationship with him. I told him what had happened in the past. I told him, "I'm not holding back, but I'm still scared. I don't want to go through that again." I guess I said the wrong thing. He let out a bitter laugh and looked at me. "I'm so attracted to you. I wouldn't make you sad or make you uneasy. Can you think about a future with me? I would make you happy." Tyler's gaze was enough to calm my worries. I made up my mind and decided to get in a relationship with him. He really cared about me. Even when we decided to get married after a year of dating, he respected my wish to continue working. My parents were overjoyed that I was so happy. They also liked Tyler, and we were able to build a good relationship with each other's families. I was living a happy, fulfilling life at work and at home. But then something happened. My husband and I went on a trip to Hawaii at the end of the year, the only time we could go on vacation and relax together. While having dinner at the resort restaurant, we ran into my sister and Ken. I couldn't believe my eyes for a minute. It had been about 3 years since I'd seen them. Even though it had been so long, Miley and Ken's condescending eyes had not changed. They caught me in their line of sight and came up to me, grinning. "Ugh, there are poor people here. Hey, Ken, let's complain to the waiter and ask him to kick them out." "Okay, yeah. If we're around these people, we'll look low class." They were talking loudly on purpose so that we could hear them. They were glancing at us and seemed to be enjoying our reactions. There were so many things I wanted to say, but this is a restaurant. There were people eating around us. I kept my feelings in check and continued eating in silence. Tyler, like me, completely ignored them, as if he had not noticed their presence, and smiled at me, saying, "This appetizer is delicious." "Don't ignore me, you ugly bitch. This is not a place for someone like you. Get the hell out of here." "You're not my sister." "What? You forgot about me, your cute little sister?" I know you're still upset that I took your fiancé. You're so jealous of me. I heard you're still working. Working even after you're married? Poor you. The two of them started making fun of not only me, but also my husband. I could put up with it if it was just about me, but I couldn't stand listening to them making fun of my husband. I had had enough, and I sprang out of my chair. All right, I was keeping my mouth shut, but just as I was about to snap, Tyler quickly stepped forward as if to protect me. Then he looked at me and said in a calm voice, "Katie, don't let these people make you angry." But they even made fun of Tyler, and I couldn't stand listening to them any longer. He could tell how I was feeling, and he looked at me and nodded. Ken and Miley, who were watching us, gave Tyler a condescending look and snickered. They looked at us and scoffed. You poor people are all dressed up. You may think you're dressed up, but you're not dressed nicely at all. You guys are matching. Miley pointed her finger at Tyler and laughed at him. I can't help but feel bad that I put my husband through this. But Tyler, on the other hand, didn't seem to mind at all, and he turned to the two of them in a matter-of-fact manner. You two are matching too. Your characters match. You both have nothing better to do than to look down on others. Hearing my husband's words, they looked like they had lost it. What? Are you making fun of us? Don't talk to us, you poor bastard. Don't you know who I am? I'm a doctor. I help ordinary people like you. You have no right to make fun of me. Unlike you, a poor man with a plain wife, I can choose as many women as I want. Saying this, Ken hugged Miley with an arrogant and boastful look on his face. Miley and Ken did look good next to each other, but just as before, my husband replied to both of them in the same matter-of-fact manner. I know what you're talking about, he said. Ken, you interned at the medical school of the University of A and have been working at your current hospital ever since, right? That's right. Ken is a doctor at a big hospital. If you know his background, even an idiot knows the difference between him and a poor person like you. Ken seemed somewhat surprised to learn that Tyler knew about his background, but Miley became very proud and began to talk. But she suddenly stopped talking when she heard Tyler's next words. Yes, I know very well. We manage the hospital, you know. We have to know who works there. What? Management? Miley had nothing to say. Ken also seemed to be in a daze, but not fully grasping the situation. Tyler took out his business card and began to introduce himself. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Tyler Morris, and I'm the president of the group company that manages the general hospital where you work. What? Ken finally opened his mouth. Miley was just staring at his business card. Yes, Tyler is the president of a group company that manages a number of hospitals. He told me that he first saw me when he came to the hospital for an inspection. During the inspection, he happened to hear that I had broken off my engagement with Ken and had been transferred to a different hospital. Tyler was surprised to see me working with a smile on my face. When he asked me to go out with him, he said he was attracted to me because of my dedication to my work, no matter what my personal life was like. Because he liked that about me, he respected my opinion that I didn't want to quit my job even after marriage. The job of a president is, in a word, hard work, but Tyler took care of himself. So what Ken said earlier, that he feels sorry for me that I have to work, is just ridiculous. People who only see things their way wouldn't understand. But I'm very grateful to Tyler for supporting me in doing what I want to do. And I can proudly say that I am happy to be married to Tyler. Ken said, I can't believe he's the president. He looked anxious. Miley looked up from her phone and shouted loudly, Hey, wait a minute! It is Tyler Morris! He started his own business early on, and at only 30 years old is the president of a major group company. He's been featured in all kinds of magazines. You're screwed. Ken looked at Miley's phone screen and his face turned pale. Miley looked down and Ken got on his knees and began to apologize. I'm so sorry. I didn't expect Katie to marry someone like you, and I was rude. Don't you see that what you just said alone is very disrespectful? It seems like disrespect for others runs deep in your bones. I find it hard to believe that someone who acts like you is a good doctor. Ken became even more flustered and continued to apologize. But Tyler wasn't having it. He said, "If we keep causing a scene, it will disturb the people around us. Katie, we can order room service." He called out to a nearby waitress and gave her the room number. Then Miley screeched, "That room is one of the nicest ones here! You're kidding, right? Let me go with you!" How could she say that? Like there was any way I was going to allow that to happen. I said, "If we're around people like you, we'll look low class." My husband and I walked away. After getting back to Japan, Ken was given a pay cut when Tyler reported the incident. He said, "Doctors are in high demand. I don't care. I'll quit." Ken was unable to find a job because of bad rumors spreading in the industry. The hospital that finally hired him had a bad reputation. The working environment was terrible, and the wages were low. Ken and Miley constantly fought because they could no longer afford the luxuries they used to. Maybe this is why Ken had an affair with a nurse at the hospital. "I'll make sure I get what's mine." However, there was no way my sister, who didn't want to lose her husband's status as a doctor, would easily agree to the divorce. They ended up going through a divorce settlement and both spent tons of money. After a year of mediation, the divorce was finalized. But my sister never dropped her extravagant habits and blew all the money from the property division and alimony. She now lives in poverty in a shabby apartment. Ken married the nurse he had an affair with, but a medical error happened at his hospital and it closed. Both Ken and his new wife lost their jobs. Meanwhile, I just recently gave birth to my first child and went on maternity leave. Through the birth of my child, I realized how wonderful medical work is, and once again, I felt proud of my job. I intend to continue working with Tyler to balance work, housework, and childcare.
Family trips are more enjoyable without the daughter-in-law. She's just in the way. From the window of the speeding car, my mother-in-law looked down on me with a mocking smile. It all started on the first day of a family vacation with my husband's family. On the way to a luxury hotel, we stopped at a highway gas station, and suddenly I was left behind all alone. I was completely lost and stood frozen on the spot, a moment I'll never forget. My name is Susan. I'm 30 years old, and I focus on housework, not working outside the home. My husband, Thomas, is a management consultant and often away from home. Since I spend a lot of time alone and my husband has been covering all of mother-in-law's living expenses since my father-in-law passed away, we decided to live with her in our home. Mother-in-law was thrilled that her only son was moving back home, but she seemed displeased that I, his wife, was coming along. I'm not glamorous and I have no interest in designer brands. I do a lot of water-related chores, so even with care, my hands get rough and I choose clothes that are easy to move in. To mother-in-law, I seemed like an embarrassing daughter-in-law to show others. Mother-in-law, Linda, has always been a show-off, obsessed with appearance and brands. She's long since spent her grandfather's inheritance and her savings, but she has no intention of changing her luxurious lifestyle, always begging my husband for more. My husband always firmly refused, saying, "I'm giving you living expenses, not money for luxuries." But mother-in-law never gave up, always causing trouble. Furthermore, my sister-in-law and her husband live nearby. Sister-in-law, Jessica, has the same character as her mother, always making snide remarks like, "Thomas could do better than a plain woman like you." She comes to our house every day, demanding meals, baths, and drinks, but never contributes money or helps with chores. "You're Thomas's wife, so it's only natural that you do all the housework. You're not good-looking, so at least keep the house clean. Thomas is too kind. Susan has always been poor and doesn't understand anything about brands, right? Yet mother-in-law would tell my husband, I do all the housework myself. And sister-in-law would claim, we're good friends. I've been working in customer service, so I've been using that experience to avoid major conflicts with mother-in-law and sister-in-law for the past few years. But my husband noticed everything, from me doing all the housework to sister-in-law's terrible attitude, but he didn't confront them directly because I asked him not to. I wanted to avoid a complete breakdown with my husband's family, no matter what they did to me. My husband respected my feelings. But you don't have to push yourself too hard. I'm okay with cutting ties and living separately. Thank you, but I want to try a little harder. So I'm thinking of planning a family trip to improve our relationship. What do you think? That sounds good. I can take time off next month, so let's all go on this year's trip. Since we were dating, my husband and I have been traveling regularly. Even after moving in with my mother-in-law, my husband and I enjoy occasional trips just for the two of us. But once mother-in-law and my sister-in-law realized we were staying at luxury and famous hotels, they insisted on coming along. You two are so heartless, going on luxurious trips without us. From now on, take us with you and make sure it's extravagant. Because they were so persistent, I told them that this time we had booked a luxurious hotel for the whole family, including sister-in-law's husband. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were thrilled. But just before the trip, my husband's work made it impossible for him to join us. I thought about postponing the trip, but mother-in-law had already bragged to the neighbors about the souvenirs, so she insisted we couldn't change the plans now. Reluctantly, I agreed to go with the four of us, excluding my husband. On the day, I put mother-in-law and sister-in-law's luggage in the trunk, and since there was no room left, I carried my travel bag inside the car. Throughout the drive, mother-in-law and sister-in-law kept making snide remarks from the back seat. Feeling fed up, I glanced at the empty passenger seat where only my travel bag sat, and I began to feel a little uneasy without my husband. Even as I drove onto the highway, mother-in-law's complaints never stopped. You're driving so slowly. Are you just careless because Thomas isn't here? Really? There was an accident today, so... You're just good at making excuses. You must have deceived Thomas the same way. I didn't deceive anyone. If only slow Susan weren't here, this trip would be more fun, right, Mom? Yes, indeed. Eventually, as we were about to arrive at yet another gas station, sister-in-law surprisingly suggested, Let my husband drive the rest of the way. You must be tired, Susan. Having been forced to prepare mother-in-law's luggage and clean the house before our early departure, I was exhausted and agreed. Susan, could you buy drinks for everyone? As I got out of the car to switch drivers, mother-in-law gave me a friendly smile, unlike her usual self. Sure, that's fine. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were unusually kind. Maybe they want to improve our relationship just like I do. That's good. I felt relieved and was about to walk away from the car when suddenly the engine started. And mother-in-law threw my luggage out of the car. Then mother-in-law yelled at me with a big smile. Family trips are more enjoyable without the daughter-in-law. You're just in the way. I stood there, watching the car drive away, leaving me and my travel bag behind. I was completely lost and stood still for a moment. I will never forget the words mother-in-law said to me at that moment. Finally, I realized that no matter how much I did for mother-in-law and sister-in-law, it was all in vain. Reaching for my travel bag left in the parking space, my vision suddenly blurred. Surprised, I ran to the restroom, covering my eyes with a hand towel, and tears began to flow uncontrollably. I don't remember how long I was there, but I noticed a call on my mobile phone and checked the message. It was from my husband, who had finished work early, expressing concern about the trip with mother-in-law and the others. While I was reading the message, my husband called. Thomas, I'm alone at a highway gas station right now. What? What happened? Hearing his voice, I couldn't help but cry again. He patiently listened to my explanation without rushing me. I'm really sorry that Mom and the others did this to you. I'll come pick you up right away. I'm sorry this happened. Why are you apologizing, Susan? Because I wanted to get along with your precious family, and I couldn't. I want you to tell me how you really feel. Do you still want to try to make things work with Mom and the others? Right now, I can only think that it's too difficult. I see. I'm sorry for what my family did. I'll handle the separation and everything else with Mom and the others. But is it okay for you to leave your feelings as they are? My feelings? You've been holding back from me all this time, haven't you? Thinking back, I realized that I had always been holding back. But I had been angry with my unreasonable mother-in-law and insensitive sister-in-law all this time. Yes, I can't be with those people. I absolutely hate it. Expressing the anger I had been suppressing felt surprisingly refreshing. You can do whatever you want from now on, Susan. I'll take care of the rest. I understand. No matter what happens, I won't let them anymore. I made that firm resolution. A few hours later, my husband came to pick me up at the gas station. Being with him made me naturally smile, and I realized how calmly and happily we could spend time together, even though we were traveling the same distance. I couldn't help but grin a little, even though I felt bad for my worried husband. Thanks to his thoughtful care, I was able to rest well when we got home. The next day, my husband made a surprising proposal. I've narrowed down the options for our new home to places near Susan's parents' house. What? What's going on all of a sudden? I want to make sure we're not bothered by Mom and the others, so let's finish moving during the 3 days of the trip. Will it be difficult for you to move, Susan? My careful and planned husband would never do something so sudden. I felt that he was quite angry inside, but he had a lovely smile for me. I'm all for moving. Let's get started right away. We quickly found a new home and moving company, and we were able to move without any problems. During this time, I received several emails from mother-in-law and the others. We're having the best trip without you. The hotel is luxurious and wonderful. Make sure it's at this level next time. Dinner was the most extravagant and delicious ever. It's even more fun without seeing Susan's ugly face. Traveling with just the family is so much more relaxing. The jacuzzi is amazing. Their enjoyment of the luxurious time at the high-end hotel came through clearly. Enjoy it while you can. I was looking forward to what would happen next. At around 10 a.m. on the checkout day, as expected, I received a call from mother-in-law. Susan, what's going on? What do you mean? They told me the accommodation fee is for $100,000 if the young lady isn't there. It's completely different from what you told us at first. It's only natural that the regular accommodation fee applies since I booked it through my connections and I'm not there. What do you mean? That hotel is run by my relatives. What? That's why we were able to stay at a special rate. Well, I didn't know that. By the way, all the hotels we've stayed at on our trips were run by those relatives, so we were able to stay at a discount. Susan, you've never told us that before. Thomas told me to keep quiet about it because if Linda and the others found out, they'd demand it be free. What's that? Anyway, the accommodation fee is correct, so please pay it yourself. Wait a minute, I can't pay $100,000. I didn't go on the trip, so I can't pay for you all. Don't say that, do something, we're family, right? You said the wife of your son isn't family, didn't you? You all enjoyed yourselves as a family, so please pay as a family. Goodbye. I ignored mother-in-law, who was still yelling on the other end of the phone, and hung up, feeling refreshed. In the end, mother-in-law and the others borrowed money from a shady source to pay for the accommodation or something like that. Furthermore, when they returned home, they couldn't get living expenses from my husband or me since we had moved, and they ended up fighting and parting ways with sister-in-law's family. Sister-in-law's family also deteriorated their relationship and divorced. Sister-in-law, abandoned by her husband and without income, looked for work in the nightlife, but seemed to have trouble finding employment due to her bad personality. With no one left to rely on, mother-in-law even went to my husband's company to seek help. At that time, mother-in-law looked older than her age, with hollow eyes, a haggard face, and dirty clothes. Even when she was crying and begging in the company lobby to live with us, my husband firmly declared a break in relations. After that, mother-in-law ended up working exhaustively at a terrible live-in job. Several years have passed, and now we have a lovely child and are living very happily. We are planning to stay at that luxury hotel we couldn't go to before, just the three of us, as a family. The hotel owner's relative invited us because they want to meet our child. We are looking forward to it very much.
You mustn't come to the funeral. My husband Roger shouted at me when he learned that his father had deceased after a long battle with an illness. What wife doesn't attend her father-in-law's funeral? Despite my protest, Roger firmly refused, and I didn't understand why. On the day of the funeral, I sneaked in to observe, and there he was, seated with a woman I didn't recognize at the bereaved family's side. What on earth is going on? Who is that woman? I was shocked and confused, not understanding what was happening, but soon I would learn the shocking truth. I'm Catherine, 30 years old. I married Roger, a 35-year-old office worker, 3 years ago. We don't have any kids yet. Roger often travels for work, only coming home about 3 days a week. While he is away, I devote myself to my hobby of drawing comics. On his days off, we would go shopping together, watch movies, and enjoyed our time as a couple. Roger's mother passed away when he was a child, and his father raised him and his sister Sarah single-handedly. In the early days of our marriage, we would often visit Roger's family, a 2-hour drive away. But when his father fell seriously ill a year ago, our visits gradually decreased. Roger told me, "Dad doesn't want you to see him in his emaciated state." So I refrained from visiting. One day, a call came in on Roger's mobile after he returned from work. Dad has passed away?" Upon hearing that, I stopped preparing dinner. Roger sighed deeply after hanging up. "Was that real?" "Did you hear that? His condition seems to have worsened suddenly." The one who contacted him was his Uncle Terry. The events leading up to Roger's father passing happened in a flash, and Uncle Terry didn't even have time to call Roger. The funeral would be held the day after tomorrow. Roger seemed quite flustered due to the sudden news. As I was watching him with concern, I softly spoke, but his response was unexpected. "I'll come with you to the funeral." "No, you absolutely can't come." Why? It's obvious that I should go, right?" "Shut up. Just listen to what I say and keep your mouth shut." Roger stormed off to his room, hastily packing his suit and change of clothes. "But why? Can you tell me why?" "Shut up. I'm going to stay at my parents' house until the funeral is over. Just remember, you must not come to the funeral." "Wait, hold on a minute." Ignoring my panic, my husband Roger left the house. "It's only natural for a wife to attend her father-in-law's funeral. Then why isn't it okay for me to go?" I was left feeling frustrated and confused. Unable to let it go, I decided to ask about the location of my father-in-law's funeral. I called my sister-in-law Sarah, who I don't usually keep in touch with, but she seemed oddly distant. "How come you know about our father's death, Catherine?" "I heard it from Roger." It's surprising that he has contacted you already." Sarah seemed really puzzled, and for some reason, our conversation wasn't aligning well, but I had no time to worry about that. "Roger told me not to come, but I really want to attend the funeral." I appreciate your sentiment, Catherine, but it might be best for you not to come. Why? My father-in-law passed away, right? I want to say my final goodbye, please. After my persistent pleading, there was a moment of silence before she responded. All right, but keep this a secret from Roger, okay? Sarah gave me the location and time of the funeral, but she said, please arrive later than the start time and take a seat where you won't be noticed. I couldn't quite understand why I was being treated this way, but I was able to take bereavement leave from work and decided to go to the funeral. On the day of my father-in-law's funeral, as instructed by Sarah, I arrived a bit late at the funeral venue, and to my surprise, there was an unfamiliar woman sitting next to my husband, Roger, in the seat of the chief mourner. Who is she? Why is she sitting next to my husband? In a state of confusion and not knowing what was going on, I quietly took a seat in the farthest row back. Then I overheard the people in the seat in front whispering, Is that woman Roger's new wife, Lucy? Poor Roger. His previous wife apparently handed him divorce papers and just left. I could hear voices whispering. Not only that, I could hear whispers from other attendees speculating about me having an affair or being in debt. The shock was so great that I lost all strength and my heart began to race. I never filed for divorce, and we've never even discussed separation. And what does this remarriage mean? I couldn't catch up with the situation, but from the rumors, I understood that the woman sitting next to my husband was his new wife. She looked to be in her early 20s, and she occasionally caressed her belly, which was visibly swollen even under her loose funeral attire. When it was my turn to pay my respects, I stood up and the previously quiet venue started to buzz. She really had the nerve to show up? What an insensitive woman. I heard as I slowly approached the row where my husband was seated. When my husband Robert caught my eye, his face turned ashen and he looked visibly shaken, but his new wife seemed oblivious to his distress. Having finished paying my respects at the funeral, I swiftly left the funeral home to head to the city hall, escaping his piercing gaze. There, I took out my copy of the family register, where it was written deregistration, indicating that our divorce had taken place 5 months ago. With my hands trembling in fury, my mind went blank. How could he dare to secretly file for divorce and remarry? I will never forgive this. I gritted my teeth, resolved to take revenge on my husband. Even after a few days, Robert never returned home, nor was there any communication from him. Didn't he say he would stay at his parents' house until the funeral was over? I was filled with a desire to confront him, but I chose not to contact him, waiting to see what his next move would be. Why on earth would he secretly file for divorce and remarry, all while living with me and keeping it a secret? There must be something else going on here. As I thought back on Roger's past actions one by one, I noticed something and quickly switched on my computer. I remembered seeing him typing away at a blog on his computer in the middle of the night. Going through his history, I discovered a blog titled Roger the Dragon King's Wild Diary. There were no pictures of Roger's face, but there were pictures of his car and our home, so I knew without a doubt that it was his. As I read each article he had posted, the details of what he had been planning were written out, and my body heated up with surging anger. Ah, that's it! With a brilliant scheme in mind to get back at Roger, I called my sister-in-law Sarah and another individual. Preparing meticulously, I couldn't help but look forward to seeing the expression on Roger's face. On the day of the operation, I was standing in front of the house Roger shared with his new wife, Lucy. After a while, a delivery truck pulled up and the delivery man began unloading packages. Lucy came out of the house and began exclaiming at the entrance. What the hell is this? Whose packages are these? Hey, darling! Huh? What's going on? Called by Lucy, Robert emerged, his eyes bulging as he looked at the multitude of cardboard boxes that had been delivered. "Who's it from?" As he leaned in to see the sender's name, he abruptly began acting suspiciously, spreading his arms to hide the packages. Well, of course he would. After all, with the sender labeled as ex-wife Hart, there was no way he could keep his cool. Seeing this, Lucy raised her voice. "Ex-wife? What do you mean by that? I've heard nothing about this." Robert didn't respond to her, but quickly paid the delivery fee of $200, and when he did, he locked eyes with me, hiding in the shadows of a nearby lamppost. "Hey, you! What are you doing here?" "I got your address from your sister Sarah." I turned to Lucy, who was watching our exchange with a puzzled look, and gave her a warm smile. "Nice to meet you, Lucy. I'm Catherine, the ex-wife of Roger who sent you these packages. Sorry to surprise you. He unilaterally filed for divorce 5 months ago without telling me." When I showed her our marriage certificate, she seemed a bit taken aback, but then she invited me in, saying, "We shouldn't cause a scene outside." Once inside the living room, I ignored my trembling husband sitting next to Lucy and began to speak. "Lucy, when did you start dating Roger?" "About a year ago. He said he was single. I can't believe it." "Interesting. So he deceived both you and me." "Come on, don't say such horrible things. Haha. It's just a simple misunderstanding, isn't it?" I was speechless at my husband's nonchalant laughter and his utter lack of remorse. "It's unacceptable that you filed for divorce without my consent. I'm suing you for $30,000 in alimony. You've been cheating, so it's only fair, right?" "What? Why should I have to pay that?" While my husband was fuming with anger, Lucy, on the other hand, seemed quite calm. "Well, don't be so stingy. Just pay her, darling. After all, you're the boss, so $30,000 shouldn't be a big deal, right?" At hearing that, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Lucy looked at me, puzzled by my reaction. "Who's the boss? Roger's been lying about that too?" "Lucy, he's just an ordinary office worker." "What? Roger, what's going on?" As Lucy confronted him, my husband, beads of sweat appearing on his forehead, began to make excuses. "Lucy, I'm sorry for lying, but when my father died, I came into a large sum of money." His stupidity left me with nothing to do but laugh bitterly. From his blog, which I had found, it was clear that he was under the delusion that he would inherit a fortune if his seriously ill father passed away. He had lied about his identity to his mistress, got her pregnant without showing any signs of panic, and joyfully documented his plan to divorce me unilaterally. When I slapped the printed pages of his blog onto the table, the doorbell rang. My husband opened the door, and there stood Terry, his uncle. "There's no way you'd inherit anything, you idiot!" In fact, besides Sarah, Terry was the other person I had contacted. Before entering this house, I had called Terry on my cell phone and had him listen to our entire conversation. "You explained to our family that Catherine left you after having an affair and filing for divorce, didn't you?" That... Roger seemed unable to come up with an excuse and started to get defensive. "Just because of that, it doesn't mean I can't inherit my father's estate. I am his son, after all." "You've been disinherited. That's got nothing to do with the estate." "Huh? What are you talking about?" From what I heard from Terry, Roger was always pestering my in-laws for money. When my father-in-law rejected him, Roger would insult him and sometimes even resort to physical abuse. Recognizing his life was nearing its end, my father-in-law had taken the initiative to disinherit Roger. "Hold on a minute. So you're saying I'm not getting a single cent? I've got debts because I was counting on my father's inheritance. What am I supposed to do?" "That's what you deserve," was all I could say. Your father wanted you to become a responsible person. That's why you thought it would be better not to give you any money. Don't you understand his feelings? So, give me the inheritance and I'll become more responsible." The more Roger spoke, the more I was filled with disgust. And it seems Lucy, his mistress, felt the same. "You told me you were a CEO. That's why I went with you. I got no use for a poor man." "Lucy, please, don't say that. Our baby's about to be born." With that, she let out a big sigh and shot a glare at him. "I'll give birth and raise this child by myself. All I need from you is alimony and child support." "Lucy, please forgive me." Roger began to sob, but I wasn't about to let him off the hook. "You'll also have to pay me alimony." "That's impossible. I don't have that kind of money." "Oh, I got it. Catherine, let's give it another go." "What? You had the audacity to file for divorce, and now you're asking to remarry?" "Please, I'm begging you. You can work too. We can repay the debt together." "Are you kidding me?" Furious at Roger's selfishness, I yelled back, shaking him off my leg and leaving the house with Terry. Soon after, my ex-husband was served with divorce papers from Lucy, who was demanding $20,000 in alimony and $500 a month in child support, according to my sister-in-law Sarah. In addition to the $30,000 in alimony that I had demanded, my ex-husband was swamped with the debt from the mortgage on the house he lived in with Lucy and was reportedly working like a horse from dawn till dusk. Meanwhile, I was enjoying a carefree single life. Sarah, who used to be my sister-in-law, and I have become great friends, and when she comes over to stay, we have a great time chatting. To top it off, a comic strip I drew based on my ex-husband's blog post has received a phenomenal response on social media, and I'm going to publish it. Excitedly contemplating the title for the comic, I'm enjoying my new daily life.